I'm Joseph R.C. or JJ with the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission, the part of Parks and Recreation's Park Planning and Development Division in Prince George's County. I'm the park planner for the central area of the county and the co-project manager for this master plan. On behalf of the project team and the Department of Park Recreation, I want to thank you all for joining us tonight and participating in this virtual public meeting for the Walker Mill Regional Park Master Development Plan project. We're excited to start discussing the plan, especially since we have more than double the participation from the January meeting. I also want to thank Councilman Davis and his staff for joining us and supporting the team throughout the process. I will pass the mic off to him for a quick introduction, but I just want to review some virtual meeting etiquette that can also be seen on screen. First, as you may have seen, the meeting is being recorded. The recording, along with all other meeting materials, will be posted to the project website, which is pgparks.com/WMRP Master Plan. On the project website, you'll find other materials from previous meetings and other engagement tools that we've used. Second, we'll be keeping everyone on mute until we separate into the breakout rooms after the main presentation. If you have any questions during the presentation, the chat box is available for you to submit your comments and input. Now I'll pass it off to Councilman Davis for an introduction and welcome.
Well,
Davis, if you could unmute yourself.
Good afternoon, D6. How is everybody? JJ, appreciate you for bringing us back together virtually. I think the last time we met virtually, it was cold outside. I can officially say it's not cold outside. Believe me, it's a blazing 100 degrees, but it's exciting here in Prince George's County, especially in District 6. Over the last several months, we have been blessed with the opportunity, first of all, to say that, so many of our D6ers are still really pushing through this year we've had with regard to the COVID-19 pandemic. We're so glad that so many of us are safe, but let's just take a quick moment to shoot up a prayer for all of those families that were adversely impacted. Let's also shoot a quick prayer up for those families adversely impacted in Miami. And let's always pray together so we stay together. So look, D6, it's been exciting here. As you can see from our backgrounds, most of our virtual backgrounds place us right in Walker Mill Regional Park at the Concord Mansion. We're so fortunate to have those. Thank Park and Planning. And if you'd like one of those virtual backgrounds for one of your future Zooms, just let JJ know. I'm certain he can make it happen. Look, the bus tour happened, feels like 8 years ago almost now to me, Nell. And it feels like we've had great conversations over that past 8 years with regard to the budget. We've added the advent of the turf field. We have some baseball themes coming in at Walker Mill Regional Park. We actually were able to celebrate at least one Juneteenth in our regional park, and we're looking forward to the possibility of continuing that celebration now that everyone else has figured out that Juneteenth needed to be a national holiday. We're so proud of that because we know we've kept the flame going for the last few decades here in D6, thanks to your council member who started this, Sandine, and we've carried the torch. I think it's important that we have this chat today. We've excitingly opened up our regional medical center in District 6. We put a shovel in the ground earlier this week at Walker Mill Middle School here in District 6. Our Central High School has been renovated and our students should return to our Central High School hopefully this fall. Our Health and Human Services building, if you drive down Central Avenue, you see that thing happening in what we used to call Hampton Mall. That's Health and Human Services coming to District 6. And one that you might not know already, but if you ride through Ritchie Station, there will be a grocery store there very soon. Our good friends from Aldi will be joining us. Our goal is to make sure that all of that fervor remains throughout the District 6 diaspora, while we make Walker Mill Regional Park the very best park in Prince George's County, and we're not far from making that happen. The team here today will definitely take you on a journey that includes a lot of the input that you have placed, D6ers have placed into the record over the last couple of months and last several years, and they want you to stay involved in the process, stay involved in this virtual reality while we create this nexus for District 6 at Walker Mill Regional Park. So I'm glad that we're here virtually. I can't wait till we get back together and see each other and we can hug each other's neck. But what we're gonna do now, because JJ told me I only had a few minutes to talk, what I'm gonna do is give him the drum roll and say, hey staff, raise your hands, let everybody know we're here. Lene, Jeffrey, Rita, Nell, JJ is yours.
Thank you, Councilman Davis, for the energy in getting this meeting started. I would like to start off with introducing the rest of the team who you will be seeing throughout the rest of the meeting. Starting with my right hand, Claire Warstall, who is the other co-project manager. Sonia Ewing and Laura Connolly, also with Park Planning and Development. Our consultant, Mark Janae, Kirsten Nichols with LSG Landscape Architecture, Kathy Dixon with K Dixon Architecture, and last but not least, the screenplay team, including Tom Deal and Art Thatcher. All of whom are the wizards behind the scenes tonight, running the technical pieces of the meeting. Next slide. This is the agenda for the night, and as you can see, there's a lot of material to get through before 7:30. I will quickly run through my next couple of slides so we can get to the meat of the presentation. Again, feel free to send your questions and comments through the chat box. Oh, and I forgot. I also do want to shout out the DPR leadership team and Bridget, who is the PV&D division chief. Next slide. So as you can see on the screen, this is a timeline of the project schedule. We are more than halfway through the project where we have studied the existing conditions and natural resources at the park, collected input from you, residents and various park users, and internal staff on a vision for the park. The final master plan will be complete late fall or early winter this year, but we'll have a thorough master plan that outlines an implementation strategy for the next 20 to 25 years. Next slide, please. Sorry, Art, next slide. And these are some of the themes and priorities that we were made aware of throughout the previous meetings and engagements we hosted, which are reflected through the concepts that you will see tonight. I'm sorry, I missed one slide. Can you go back up one? Okay, yeah, so this is the engagement timeline. That specifically shows when we started with the survey back in fall 2019 through today, where you can see where the green arrow is. There will be 2 following community meetings through the last phases of the project. So again, make sure to keep and stay engaged through the project website. And one more slide, sorry. Okay, so the next couple of slides, we have some poll questions for you all. The first question, have you participated in prior public engagements for Walker Mill Regional Park Master Plan? There should be a screen popping up where you can input your answer. And for those of you who are not able to see the pop-up, feel free to type it in the chat. And so we'll give a few seconds to this first poll.
About halfway there.
And then once you answer, we will also show just a chart of the answers.
All right, so we're at a minute. We're going to close the poll now. And then I'll share the results with you.
Okay, it looks like we have at least half of the participants here tonight who participated in other events. And a third of you are new to this process. So welcome, welcome to the Master Plan Project. There's a lot of information, like I said earlier, and there will be other opportunities for you to share your comments and input. So on to the next poll question. What is your zip code? Then another pop-up should appear on your screen. If you do not reside in any of these zip codes, feel free to input your zip code in the chat box. Okay, I think we can, for time's sake, I think we can close that one out.
Okay, and I'll show.
And then next slide, please. All right, and so for some context about Walker Mill, like Councilman Davis said, Walker Mill is one of the best parks within the central area, but you guys have two, Walker Mill and Watkins, just right down Central Avenue. There are a total of 4 regional parks in the county, one in Fairland and one down at Casca Regional Park. We are completing master plans for each regional park. Watkins was done in 2019. Casca is happening now with Don Herring, and Fairland will start this at the end of this year or next year. Next slide, please. And so these are some of the pieces that you all already may know. This is the developed portion of the park on the south side of Walker Mill Road. We have amazing amenities there now, built from a previous master plan. So we have the skate park, tennis courts, basketball court, the diamond fields, the rectangle fields, and the imagination playground. We're really doing this master plan to build upon what already is there and really cement this park as a jewel in the county. And so everything, you can see everything within the yellow dotted lines on the map on the right-hand side is our focus of the master plan. There is already a community garden up there along with the historic Concord Manor. Next slide.
All right.
So another poll, tell us about the people in your household. Please choose all that apply. And we'll just do this one for 1 minute. Okay, we'll close that one out. And then as you can see, most of the participants here tonight have people in the household, mostly within the 31 to 55-year-old age range. Okay, and then one last quick poll before we get into the meat of the presentation. Please answer, how often do you visit or use the park facilities at Walker Mill Regional Park? Okay, let's close this one out. Yeah, most of you really don't use the park. Well, thank you for coming anyways. Your input will really be needed. I hope everything that we're proposing and everything that you see tonight really encourages you to come to the park even more. And then next slide. And just quickly, this master plan is really building off the foundation of our functional master plan for the Department of Parks and Recreation, Formula 2040. It really guides some of the decisions that we make as a parks department. And we try to meet these goals of connectivity, health and wellness, and economic development. But also these other highlighted major goals like programs, acquiring parkland and preserving parkland, making sure that there are enough aquatic centers and recreation around the county, as well as trails to meet these goals. And so I will now pass it on to Mark with our consultant team to take us through the next few slides.
Great, thanks JJ, and welcome everyone. It's a pleasure to be back speaking with you. This is a wonderful project, and we've got some really great ideas to show you. But first, we just want to give everybody an opportunity to catch up who has either isn't as familiar with the park as many of you are from the polling. I mean, 85% of you have been there, and I think over half have participated so far. Please know that if you go to the website for the park, you can find videos that describe some of these elements in more detail. And of course, if you have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat box. So I'm just going to go through a little brief background on this very interesting north side of the park. The slide right here shows you some of the historical resources, archaeological resources. It's a focus on that. And at the upper right, the first, of course, is the Concord Manor House, which is really a very prominent feature on the northern side of the park. And it's on the National Register of Historic Places, which means there are some it really defines the things that can be done around that property. And you can see the red line and green line in the center of the plan view that indicate really the National Register boundary, and also an easement that the Maryland Historic Trust has it. Now, that's not the only historic resource, however, on the site and surroundings. Right below that, we have an illustration of a historic cemetery that occurs on site. And of course, we know that also some of the archaeological research done on site has indicated that there are probably former quarters of enslaved people who had worked as laborers in the property. Because the plantation dates back to the 1750s through the 19th and into the 20th century. Below that, also, of course, nearby is the Ridgely Rosenwald School, very important local site and currently interpreted by Parks. And that you can also see at the bottom, the Chesapeake Beach Railway actually ran through the site. That blue line going from the upper left to the bottom right is a railroad line. You can still see the embankment, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. So why don't we go to the next slide? Just a moment on the complexities of dealing with a historic register property. This is a very, very simplified flowchart of what Parks has to go through to get this approved by both the Maryland Historic Trust and then the Prince George's County's own Historic Preservation Commission. But because it's a National Register site, and because it has an easement with the state on it, there's a fairly legally prescribed process that really, for anything that's planned in or around the site, I mean, mostly within the easement and within the boundaries of the National Historic Trust area, but those agencies really do take a broad look, as we found out moving into this. So we are working very closely with them. We have spoken and met with them, and this will be a very important part moving forward, because there are certain things that we are limited in what we can do. Next slide, please. And in a similar way, but a little bit different, we know that the sites surrounding natural resources are both their own opportunity, I might say, and a constraint. Of course, the historic house and its grounds are a wonderful opportunity as well. But the couple of high level points here to be made, because the property used to be a working farm some years ago, and some of the lands are still in pretty good shape. Others, like number one, the photograph there really shows some areas of invasive species that have sort of recolonized some of the areas that aren't used for agriculture anymore. And there are a couple of fairly good sized areas that our environmental consultants pointed out. Number two is really the very extensive area of forest on site. And that includes some really county record sized trees, which are just terrific. There's a couple of many amazing large trees out there, but there are at least 2 or 3 that are county record size. Item 3 is really the remaining farmland area. While it hasn't been cropped for the most part in some time, many of the soils found within that area are really agricultural soils of state importance. Really, the state of Maryland has a list of agricultural soils that it considers very important, and the site has some of those, which is a kind of a really unique resource. And then finally, number 4, and the large blue area to the right, really the eastern boundary of this site, is really where the southwest branch of the western branch of the Patuxent River, the longest named stream I think I've ever encountered, really is quite a beautiful floodplain area with really woodlands associated with it, interesting environmental space. And that actually extends down below to the south of Walker Mill Road into the southern portion of the site. And there are a lot of wetlands associated with that. And those, of course, have many limitations. They can't really be impacted negatively. Next slide, please. So as a result of this, and I might add that we had many, many team members who we talked about in prior meetings who contributed in the archaeological and environmental work. We identified we put together this map that's kind of a shorthand version of the summary of what we found out. And there are probably a couple of main takeaways with that. And the first, I think, is that there are a lot of constraints to developing new, bigger facilities on the northern part of the site. And we don't really want to impact those woods. We don't want to impact the wetlands. We want to make sure we're careful around working around the existing house. And we want to find a good use for the farmlands that are very important. So that means that probably at best, the amount of area that really can be developed is about in the range of 30 to 35 acres in the northern part of the site. And that's in those areas shown in yellow. And they're like 3 or 4 disconnected areas, actually. But that actually represents about 13% or more of the upper part of the northern part of the site. So have to keep that in mind as we talk about the kinds of things that we can do on this site, as my colleagues Kirsten and Kathy will speak about in a little bit. We're talking about fitting into those areas some of the suggestions that we'll be showing you. And the other thing that probably is important to point out on that last slide, and no need to go back to it, is that there are very limited ways to get in and out of the site right now. And frankly, there are limited ways to get to the site. Transit is a limitation, and the site needs to be better connected to the regional trail network, including the Central Ave Trail, for example. So the next slide, please. So as JJ introduced these, really the 5 things that really came out of our prior discussions with you and in all the meetings that we've identified so far to date, some sort of themes of how the site could be used. And one is regional history. Obviously, we've got this great resource of the house and the connection to the Ridgely family, who, Ridgely Farm was purchased from the Berry family, the owners of the Concord Manor House and grounds in the 19th century. And then from there, they, developed quite an impressive history of entrepreneurial activity in the county. The community access and gathering, I think, is an important thing. We know, for example, from talking with you that, areas to gather in the southern part of the site are limited. It's pretty much built out now with the really popular athletic facilities and the playground area, skate park, and so on. And health and recreation are very important. Every time we do a survey or a study with a park planning like this, the top thing is walking trails for people to get out, get some exercise. And after the COVID period, they're going to be wider walking trails probably now, so that we're prepared for whatever comes next. We know that agricultural use is very important to both the community and really in honor of the past use of the site and because of those state recognized important agricultural soils on it. And then finally, protection and interpretation of the site's really unique and important natural resources. It's one of the most large, extensive forests in the county inside of the Beltway. It's quite unique for that you can have that kind of access inside the Beltway to take a walk in the woods. So next slide, please. So that will give me the opportunity now to introduce my colleague, Kirsten Nichols, who is going to talk to you about the experience zones and some of the master plan options.
Thanks, Mark. You can go to the next slide. So for those of you who are new to this site, especially, we're going to start off by just walking through the idea of these experience zones. So Walker Mill Park North and South is over 500 acres. It's a very large piece of property and it has a lot of different features and conditions. So when we talk about planning for it, we want to talk about it in smaller sections that have similar characteristics. We're not going to just do one thing over the whole 500 acres. The experience zones that we have, the park kind of actually naturally separates itself into are shown here, with the light blue color being conservation areas, both on the north side and existing already on the south side. We have the orange line, which thematically shows you the active recreation zone existing on the southern side of the park. The bright pink is Walker Mill Road. There's a bright pink race of cars going through the middle of the park, bisecting it. We have the large purple rectangle shows the historic core of the Concord Manor grounds and the major easements surrounding them. Then we have the other dark green rectangle on the western side, we call the western parcel, and that is the largest area that is potentially developable, meaning it doesn't have as many restrictions in terms of things like wetlands or easements or things like that other areas do. And then we also have some other areas shown here in brown and light green that are places where we could do potential development of different things. So we're going to talk about all these in a little bit more detail and show different design scenarios and proposals for things that could happen in them. Thank you. So we've had a few focus groups and some community meetings already, and we've done a lot of listening to what kind of different program options people are interested in would like to see here. So we want to show you how those might fit into these different zones on the park and give you an opportunity to see if we have done a good job listening, if you have more things to add, what your feedback is, because we're doing a lot of talking here and it is Zoom, but we really want to know what you think, and we will have that breakout room opportunity after this, as well as the chat, which please put in questions anytime, it's okay. But we really do want to get your feedback. And if you have questions or want to share anything, please feel free at any time. So this overall slide just kind of shows how the things we're going to delve into fit together, and we'll come back to this later as a summary, but just to let you know that we are trying to think about these things comprehensively as well, and not just piecemeal. Can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, we're going to start off right with the Concord House grounds because they are front and center and contain some of the most unique and historic and, constricting, but not necessarily in a bad way, because they're protecting the resources parts of Walker Mill North. So these elements are unique to both the county and the state and the site. And we know that they're not just of general historic interest, but they're very personal. We've had participants in past meetings who, had relatives and forefathers who inhabited this land. And that's really amazing to have that continued connection. And as Mark talked about too, the connection of the Ridgely property is just off site, and to really think it's a great opportunity to have this land where we could interpret not just the past, but also the continuing present and the story of the community and how that has developed and is connected to those sites in the present day. So we really want to focus this parcel of land on the interpretation of those elements and that story. And there's a lot of different ways that can be done. There's some images here of signage. We could certainly talk about having a walk. Some of these buildings on site, there's not just the house, which is also obviously very prominent, but there's also remains of a tobacco barn and a corn crib and some other outbuildings. And so to create a bit of an interpretive loop so that people could walk around and you could have school groups come or guests and get more of a story and see more of this site in that way. We would also, could talk about potentially doing some sort of enactment or something along those lines. We think that, having school groups out here is a great idea, and we'd probably want to think about finding a place for them to have a sit down area where they can talk about what they've learned and get some more information. Some groups and parks in the area also do archaeology on site in certain ways, and that may be something that could be of interest here. We know that there are other things left to be discovered that are not necessarily present at this time. And, there's definitely options for how that could be discovered in the future. This option also shows the area between the house and Walker Mill Road as an open lawn space. So the idea is perhaps that could be used for gatherings, group activities, things. I mean, we always want to be careful to protect the resources we have on site, but at the same time, this is a wonderful setting and could become a gathering space for the community. Let's take a look at the next slide. This one, you might notice it's not too different because, again, the manor grounds are protected and we do want to protect them. One main difference here is that this proposal keeps the land between the house and Walker Mill Road in agricultural use, and kind of focuses that gathering space to the rear of the house. This one also, there's a pathway in pink you can see, which we're calling an art walk. And the idea would be perhaps not just to have historic interpretation, but to invite artists to come in and make more contemporary statements on a semi-permanent or rotating basis, talking about whether it's topics that directly relate to the history on site or other things that the community is interested in. We think there's ways to make those connections between the history and the current community. And
Can I,
also,
sorry,
yeah,
can I just piggyback on what you're saying?
sure.
So just for everyone's knowledge, everything in the white dotted lines is one of the easements that we have to work with Maryland Historic Trust and the county's Historic Preservation Commission on. Again, just to reinforce what Mark and Christian is saying, that does take collaboration and a partnership. So we are in conversation with them while we go through these concepts to make sure that we are following the goals and the vision of preserving these historic sites. And I'll pass it back off to you, Christian.
Okay, good. Yes. And on that note, some of these roads and trailways and access points are a bit theoretical. We would, if any use, need some sort of connection across the site and, providing some level of service and accessibility to facilities, but all of that would need to be approved and go through the approval process before it is, official and so forth. Another thing that we have considered is taking the tobacco barn and finding a way to not necessarily renovate it completely, but do some sort of reinterpretation and perhaps have that as a base for other events or as a gathering space or backdrop, which could be really neat and special because it is a very unique kind of structure in the back of the site. Okay, next slide. So I'm going to go right into agriculture next because it is so closely aligned to Concord Manor. We know there's a thriving community garden on site, and we got a lot of feedback in prior community meetings that that was a really important use and people really enjoyed it. And not only did they enjoy the community garden, but they had a lot of ideas of how to expand it through larger plots, through greenhouses, through agricultural education, farmers markets, all kinds of things. And this site really lends itself to that. We have the soil. I mean, we have the space, it's flat, we have the historic agricultural use. So there's definitely a lot of opportunity for ways that could be incorporated. Our suggestion or proposal in this scenario is to put that in the east of Concord Manor. There's an existing, it may not really be in use because there's nothing really in use on the north side of the site right now, but there is an existing access point across from the existing access point to Walker Mill South. And so that's a great place if we wanted to bring in a road and have some parking. It's shown in the bottom right corner next to a rectangle marked as greenhouse. So having that proximity to access, and there's also utilities, which is great, really useful for support facilities, if you need water, irrigation, bathrooms, all that kind of stuff, that's great. Another thing, because this site has extra room, we could expand the community garden and also have space left over for some larger plots, which could be utilized in a couple of different ways. They could be leased to people for larger scale community use. They could become plots in cooperation with the University of Maryland and their agricultural programs. They could be demonstration gardens. They could be 4-H lands. There's different, and it could be a combination, it doesn't have to be just only one thing, but there's a lot of ways to bring agricultural programs into this land and into this park and bring other partners in to also make use of that space in a way that benefits not just the neighbors, but the whole community and region and area around. Next slide, please. So in the second option, again, because we're not having the great lawn in between Concord Manor and the road, we could potentially even expand agricultural programs. That area between the house and the road is about 6 acres. It's pretty big. So there's a lot of things that could be done there. And again, with some of those larger scale partners, I mean, you probably wouldn't want to have 6 acres of tiny community garden plots necessarily. It would be a larger scale sort of agricultural use, but that certainly could open up some very interesting things. And you could also perhaps think about doing some agricultural demonstration. And to reiterate, anything that happens in that line goes through the approval of the historic committees and so forth. So these are just proposals and design scenarios, and we want to know what you're interested in and what you like. And we hopefully they would be viable options here. Okay, I'm gonna move forward. So the western parcel is one of the more exciting pieces. No offense to Concord Manor, it's also exciting, but this is a great big open space where we could really do the largest insertion of program really into the park. And this option, we are focusing on different types of garden programs, which makes kind of a transition between the active sports on the south and the conservation lands on the north. This proposal on the screen that you can see shows a combination of native gardens, community gardens, children's play garden, demonstration gardens, a lot of different programs. There's a central lawn here so that people can use that as a gathering space and focal point and come and have lunch amongst the gardens. A lot of this could be run in conjunction with other groups such as master gardening societies and horticultural groups. There are similar type parks nearby in Virginia that have partnerships with groups that come in, and so that not all of the maintenance necessarily needs to be taken up by just one entity, but you can have different groups come in and volunteer groups. And it's a really amazing way to have a lot of different nature education where people are, having scout groups come in and learn about things. They're having school groups come in and learn about native plants. They're having neighbors come in and work on demonstration gardens for rain gardens for your yard, or edible gardens, or, any kind of thing. There's all kinds of different workshops and classes and fun community activities that you can do in these kinds of gardens, and food programs, and it really lends itself to a lot of different community involvement and activities that you can do there. We also heard a lot about how people just love to use the park currently for picnic spaces and for getting together and hanging out and having barbecues, and there really wasn't enough space currently on the south side to support that. So we want to make sure when we have these areas that we're adding in new picnic spaces. We have a couple of shelters shown here with parking nearby, and in open areas that are big enough that they can be used for informal sports or other things, as while people are enjoying their afternoon barbecue get together group time. We're also including a couple, that bright orange color is for some active programs just to kind of mix it up. And so people don't necessarily feel like they have to try to cross the road every time if they're up there. This one suggests an outdoor obstacle course, which if you haven't heard of that, it's kind of like a combination between a children's playground and an adult exercise course. It's for a little bit like teens and older, but it's a lot more fun and active, and they're like called outdoor ninja places, and they're not the kind that you have to pay for, just the kind that have equipment out, but they're really fun and a fun way to get like a little bit different user group, a little bit older, kind of youth oriented outdoor fun program involved, which we thought is nice to situate next to a picnic area and brings a little liveliness to that kind of site. And then there's also a support facility shown in purple, and that's for the normal things like storage and bathrooms and things like that. But also in this use, it could be used for some classrooms or meeting facility. I mean, you could maybe have a cafe. It really depends on what is of interest to the community to support and what you'd like to see and do here. Okay, next slide, please. So this option for the western parcel, we are focusing on events, and we are showing a band shell. There's a lot of talk about people just loving to go hear music and have events and festivals and things like that. This event space is about 2 acres. So we think, as shown, it could potentially hold up to 3,000 people just an area. Now, of course, that also depends on things like how much parking do you have, and there's a back and forth that goes there. This one obviously has a larger parking lot associated with that event space. There's also the dark green color is a lot of planting to help provide buffers between that and the road and the residential area, because you certainly don't want it to become a nuisance. And we always want to have planting in between any programs and the Concord Manor grounds to protect their historic views and historic uses. So in addition to the event space, again, we're adding in picnic areas. There's several picnic areas on the outside of that access loop with different picnic shelters and restrooms and things like that. Oh, I see a couple of questions in the chat. One is, would nonprofit groups be able to farm and supply fresh food for the community? I think that would be a great idea. Ultimately, that would be up to MNC PPC, but when we talk about having larger community agricultural plots, yeah, we're definitely talking about having community partnerships. The county doesn't want to farm all that by themselves. They want you to come in and help them out and do things. So ideally, yes, I think that would be something they would want to do. I hope that answers the question. And if not, let me know. Okay, I'm gonna keep pushing forward here. Next slide, please. So Walker Mill Road, this has been a major point of conversation in past meetings, and we know it's really important to the neighbors, and there's a lot of concerns about the current traffic and the speed, and how are we going to make the park feel connected on both sides and not like two separate parks. One thing right now that is a bit challenging and we think contributes to that is there isn't a whole lot on the north side and it's not really developed. So when you drive through, you don't really feel like you're going through its own place. And some of that we would like to address with design treatments, if possible, such as gateway signage and planting and fencing and things that signal you're in a different zone. This is a different place. And also as we add programs in, hopefully people will get more familiarity with the use and know that that's a place and that they're being connected. Some of the treatments you can see down below we have traffic engineers on our team, and the ultimate recommendations will come as we nail down exactly what the program is and what the capacity for that program is, because all of these things are dependent on how many cars come in and what we do there. But we are, have different proposals and options. The hawk signal in the middle, that's the name for when you put up flashing lights and stop signs for cars so pedestrians can cross the road. There's also the suggestion to have a median, which will give people a resting spot, a place of refuge, so they don't have to try to cross both directions at the same time. It may be possible to put in other speed reduction markings and things like that. We also want to pay attention to the bike lane that goes across the site and make sure that that bike traffic is protected and safe and feels comfortable as people are going through the site. One thing on this plan that we want to point out too specifically is making those connections. Ideally, we would like to make the connections where there already are connections on the south side so that the intersections make sense and are connected to each other. We're also showing a connection down below on the right-hand side. On the south side, there's, if you see kind of a magenta circle, we're suggesting some new programming over in that area as well. On the southern side, we think it might be a great place. There's been talk about needing a dog park in the area, and that area is a bit underutilized. So we thought in addition to enhancing the picnic facilities on the south side, perhaps there could be a dog park over there.
If I could just mention, I'm following all of your chats. If you want the chats to be shared with everyone on the team, please send them to everyone. Any chat that you send individually to one person, we do not have the ability to capture a transcript of that. So later on, it would just be by memory. So if you want to make sure that everyone on this consultant team knows, please just chat to everyone. Sorry, next slide.
It's okay. You're good. It does get confusing on Zoom who you're sending the chat to. So these are some images of different treatments. On the upper left is a roundabout. We have talked about putting roundabouts at either entrance to the park and how that could not only slow down traffic, but give people a real indication that they're entering a different zone and they're in the park now. And there's some pictures of pedestrian crossings and how you could do that with art and with the really designated markings to get people across the road safely. And then down below are some pictures of gateway signage and protected bike lanes and things like that, because we want to make sure, again, you know, people know that this is a place and that it's important and to take that seriously as they're coming through. Okay, and I'm seeing some notes that people want traffic to slow down and they like the art and the gateway signage ideas. So those are great notes. Thank you. Okay, let's go to the next page and I'm going to let Miss Kathy Dixon talk for a couple minutes about different ideas for the park police and maintenance facilities on the eastern side of that park.
Great, thank you, Kirsten. Again, Kathy Dixon, I'm with K. Dixon Architecture. We're a local architecture firm, and we're excited to be part of the team that's doing this master plan for the new regional park. Our role in this process is, for these slides here, is showing a general overview of the proposed park police station facility that would go right along Walker Mill Park. The idea or the vision is to create a welcoming station that fits into the neighborhood and provides the services of headquarters for the services that the police will administer. What you're seeing on this slide in the center there is a general footprint or a plan of how this facility might lay out. The lower square or building is the actual police substation, and then above that, the smaller gray square is a mobile command center and motors warehouse where they would store motorcycles and equipment. And then there's a little square off to the right, to the east, which is where the canine and kennels would be situated. So we're talking about a facility with 8 to 10 or 11,000 square feet for the police station, the warehouse maybe 4,300, 4,500 square feet, and then kennel maybe another 1,000 square feet or so. Police station has what you would expect, offices, managerial and administrative offices, men's and women's lockers, but most important to you is there would be a community room for the public to gather and get together within the station that would hold 50 people or more. Also, one mention on the right here, you're seeing some images or precedents of other community stations. We want to make sure that it does fit into the character of the neighborhood. It's a 1 or 2 story facility and generally a welcoming building. The next slide is very similar. It just shows a 2-story option. The idea is that the footprint would get smaller, so you have more room for landscaping and the kennels or the dog training area. And again, off to the images you see on the right have considerable amount of landscaping. This is going to be a park setting, so we do want to make sure that it has generous greenery and is again welcoming. Of course, we'll have parking, 40 or 50 spaces expected, and separate the passenger cars or public cars from service vehicles that might be entering toward the rear of the site. I think for now that pretty much covers that. It's again just a high-level overview of what might be, what it might look like. The next stage would actually go into designing the facility, but we're not quite there yet.
Kathy, 2 quick questions in the chat. One was asking if the police substation would have visible signage from Walker Mill Road.
Yes, absolutely. And this is actually a good way to slow down traffic because you're going to be driving right by the police station, right along Walker Mill Road. So,
Okay, and then another question was about dog parks, saying that dog park would be really useful for this area. What you're showing here would be for the police, the park
That's-
police, right? I
that's
don't
correct.
recall, but
the dog
there-
park, I'm sorry.
It's across the road down. There you go. Yeah.
The
Yeah,
dog
there
park
is-
that Kirsten mentioned is across the street, yes. And then this one is actually for training of the K9 training facility.
Thank you. Just wanted to clarify that.
Mhm. Any other questions? If not, I'll pass it back to Kirsten and Mark.
Okay. Thank you, Kathy. That was great. Yeah, so now we're at the last experience zone that I'll go into detail, and that's the conservation land on the north side. The dark orange line that you can see is supposed to indicate a multi-use trail, which may be paved and is for use by pedestrians and bicyclists as well. The dashed lighter yellow orange line would be a soft trail for hiking type of use. And you can tell by all the wiggles in it that this part of land is quite hilly. And so trying to give people that experience to go up and down and around and give them a nice hike through the forest without impacting those wonderful existing trees that Mark talked about earlier. The area on the northeast that currently the tree conservation mitigation bank, that area can be, what is considered mitigation bank can be shifted a little. So there's still some opportunity. And in this, this scenario, we're showing a little bit of green activity area. And that, you know, we're thinking would be perhaps a more low impact use such as picnic or scouting, nature activities, that kind of thing. Probably at this point, due to the access along Walker Mill Drive up there, maybe not the greatest access for a very intense kind of activity, but there's certainly some opportunity there. And we are also proposing, if you look at the trail, there's the Pepco easement down the middle. And one proposal is to get that multi-use trail and build a boardwalk so that it connects over to that shopping district and the road to the right, which is already got bike lanes on it. And we think making those cross connections through the site could be really great for regional connectivity and especially the non-vehicular connectivity. So people could, you know, ride their bikes in whole different places and have it make more sense than going along some of those major roads. And then the other major bike trail, as Mark had brought up earlier, is the Chesapeake Beach Rail Trail. And if you want to go to the next slide, this shows some of the conditions along the trail. And what's really great about this is it's already graded. It's already pretty smooth and pretty flat because trains don't like to go up and down steeply. So that grading already exists. It's a really great thing to take advantage of. And in fact, it's listed currently as a priority in a number of MNC PPC planning documents as a priority trail project. So that could make a huge connection from that northwestern corner down to the southeastern corner of the parcel. And if we go to the next page, we're bringing it back to the summary. Just to give you an overview once again, concept A, the major difference here is that we are concentrating on garden programs in the western parcel. And with that, we're using the land between Concord Manor and the road as a potential lawn or gathering space. Whereas in concept B, the western parcel is a lot of focusing on event space as well as the picnic areas. And there's a bit more agricultural programming on this side. So again, you don't have to just pick one or the other. It's very much, you know, what do you like? What do you not like? What would you like to see combined? What do you think we should amp up? What could be toned down? What are we missing? We want to know, you know, what we're hearing from you is, and that we're hopefully reflecting things that you've said before and you would like to see here, and to really learn and get your feedback tonight. And I'm going to let JJ take over for a minute.
Thanks, Kristen. And I know that is a lot of information to digest. So what we'll be doing is going out into breakout rooms, into more smaller, intimate groups where we can allow you to unmute yourself and kind of go through each of the experience zones again. So how this is going to work is that there will be 2 project team members within each group, going through a conversation with whoever's participating. So we'll start, you know, we have exactly 15 minutes once we get into the breakout rooms. Once the 15-minute mark hits, then we're going to be all, we're all going to come back to the same room. So within the next minute or so, please prepare yourself with your questions. After the breakout rooms, we'll come back together and we'll have the moderators and the project team members discuss or summarize what was discussed in their breakout room. So Art and Tom, I think we are ready to go into breakout rooms. And so again, each project team member will also have some of the slides up for review during the discussion.
All right, I am, JJ, because you left, I'm having to rearrange and put the moderators back in. We'll jump in there in just 1 second.
Yeah, so sorry about that. I accidentally pressed leave.
That's funny.
And then just
For everyone.
overall to the moderators and the support team, please don't forget to hit record so we can have these conversations, make sure we take good notes. So after this meeting, we could post them online, make a FAQ sheet so everyone who's not part of this meeting currently can refer back to it. And thank you for everyone who's leaving for sticking around to this part.
All right, everybody, here we go.
So if everyone can select to join once the breakout room pop-up comes up on your screen. For those of you who are joining on a phone, I believe you will be automatically sent to your room. Hey, is everyone back? Okay, everyone should be back. We have 5 minutes on the clock. So again, thank you for participating in the breakout room sessions. I know that's probably not enough time for everyone to get their input out, but these presentations and recordings and questions, answers to your questions will be online after the meeting. So what I want to do within the next 2 to 3 minutes, kind of go to every moderator and just 1 quick sentence, 2 sentences about what you heard in your breakout room. This is just a way for everyone to get on the same page, get on the same track. And so I will start. My group, made up of 5 community members, kind of focused on the traffic and the presence of DPR at the park, making sure that we have an increased presence, maybe not in the form of a park police, but some sort of indicator that we are there, like seen at Watkins Regional Park, and also make sure that the traffic issues, that we come up with some solutions for the traffic issues along Walker Mill Road. So I will pass it off to, I believe Sonia was another leader for a group.
Sure. Our team again also talked about the traffic and being sure that we were protecting people crossing from north to south with the design. Our team felt good about the agricultural uses and the gardens and the interpretation of the historic properties and making the connection back to the Ridgely family. We also heard positive input about the dog park.
And then Mark.
Sure, yes, we had a great group. I think the first thing that came up was really the history of that Chesapeake Beach Rail Trail, and making sure that, you know, are there good photos and everything to show some interpretive elements when that gets installed. Trails were mentioned multiple times. Also, the garden idea, I think, had resonated with people, as it, you know, there really isn't anything like a real good display garden like Brookside's here in Prince George's County, and certainly it's got a great location to serve people who wouldn't normally have an easy access to that kind of place. So that resonated. There was concern to make sure that if we did do some event space, that there would be sufficient parking. Let's see, police, everybody thought that was good where it was located, and really the agriculture, interest in that. Also wanted to make sure that there was the right distribution of plot sizes, so that you know, there really were people interested in some of those larger tracts of land, the 1 acre and so on. So anyways, great group. Everybody, I think, really enjoyed the evenings, and I enjoyed helping.
And last but not least, Kirsten.
Yeah, we had a good, lively conversation too, and there's a lot of interest in the agricultural programs and how those could be combined with commercial activities, such as you know, a place where you can buy your food, have a little cafe or some kind of farm fresh food experience as well, and stop and have a bite. There was a lot of talk about garden programs and children's education and teaching kids about farming and gardening and pollinators and all kinds of that stuff, and scouting and camping sort of programs. The other thing that we talked about too was just in general the nature of a regional park and making this park seem special and like a draw, and giving it that special something, and whether that could be done not just with the history but through art and signage and statues and things that really stand out. And there was a real desire to highlight local families and regional history, and, you know, not just sort of like nationally prominent people that we all might love and admire, but really like the local people that have done amazing things in the community, and to find a place to get their names on signs and on plaques and out there, and appreciating the people of this community and what they've done here. So I thought these were all like, it was a wonderful conversation, wonderful group.
Okay, and I do, before we do the outro, I do want to bring up a point for the Concord Manor. And I heard that some groups also asked specifically about that program and what's happening with the manor. That manor is being worked on concurrently with this project, making sure that everything that we plan and propose for this site really complements that program. But as of right now, NHRD, our Natural Historic
Resources.
Yes, and cultural resources, that they will have offices on the second floor, but the first floor will be community programs, something smaller, kind of mini museum type of recommendation, because of the capacity of the current structure. Again, if you have any questions about that specifically or any other piece about this project, please feel free to contact me. Art, next slide. One more. Here is my contact information along with my phone number, and the project website. Again, pgparks.com/WMRP master plan. We will have this content from today's meeting up on the project website, hopefully before the weekend, but I will also send out an email to everyone who participated with an update when that's up. So thank you again for joining us and for sitting through a lot of this content. We look forward to having you at the next community meeting and when we start collecting your comments about the plan and what we have so far. Everyone have a great evening and I look forward to hearing from you.